Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Christina here, Jailene, with the whole Podlair crew. Before we get into the conversation, I guess we'll do introductions. I am Jailene.
I am Nai Coach.
I'm Nigel Mitchell.
This is Nai G. Glenn.
I'm Nijai Bruno.
All right. And today I am leading the Interpretives Temple. So as a topic of discussion, because we are at year end and we're going into a new year, thought it'd be good to kind of do a look back, have everyone do a look back and kind of go over. So I'll start in broad and then I'll go more specific. But the theme is so since we're all Podlair practitioners that have started at different points, but we've been into Podlair for a while now, and so the question is, like, since we have started Podlair, how has our perspective or our view of everything, and when I say everything, I mean like natural law, how, which has a lot of different aspects, how has that changed? Because I know personally that it's changed for me a great deal in lots of different arenas, and we can get into that. But I wanted to have the conversation be around that, and I thought it would be a good way for for people who are listening in or watching the broadcast and kind of trying to figure out what's Podlair about and how would it affect me and how I can get into it. This kind of would give them some insights into that from people who have actually been learning the insights from Podlair for a while. So with that,
that's true. People like to learn about different countries through travelogues. Some people, that's their favorite way to learn about a country.
Yeah, and so this is kind of like a year-end review travelogue. And so to give to kind of start everyone off, so there are different areas, I guess, that where this would a million different areas where this would apply, and we could go into a lot of different angles. One of them, of course, is just purely on Mojo reading, which is a tool that we use to read people, and I know that for myself, learning Mojo reading, which is kind of like the truth beacon, the tool that we use to read natural law and how it manifests in people's natural designs, that has changed my perspective of things, how I see people. But that's just one piece of it. So Mojo reading is like the truth beacon. So using a Star Wars analogy, since new movies come out, so the Mojo reading would be like the lightsaber, but then you have really what's imbuing that truth beacon, that lightsaber, that Mojo reading ability tool is the force, which is natural law, and so this would be how have things changed for you and how you see from like Mojo reading or your views on spirituality, your.
Do you want us to just do any of them, or do you?
Yeah, any of them, and I can start off like saying so it could be like on the geopolitical perspective, how you see the world, the relationships, whether it be with your an other, intimate partner relationships or relationships at work or with your family. So I'll start us off and just give sort of a couple of examples for me of how things have changed. Have two examples in terms of
probably might be good is we give examples is maybe give the examples of one of those kind of things and then see other people have examples on that.
Yeah.
And then
circle back.
Circle back and give another example.
Okay. That works. Yeah. So I'll give an example of, for example, for um, in terms of work for me, my path. So there's two things. One is in terms of finding with Podler and learning about my peak pathway. It really taught me one to see how I worked and truthfully see what my strengths and weaknesses are and how I peak. And that opened my eyes to, like shortcomings of the roles, the work roles that I was doing, like where, the fact that I wasn't really peaking properly in those kinds of roles. It wasn't really something that would be energetically efficient and sustainable. And so learning that, one, it is like kind of a shock at first, because you're like, oh, well, this means I'm like a lot further behind than I thought I was, or like I need to make big changes, and that can be really daunting and overwhelming at first. But then, you start stepping it out, and I've actually changed roles, and that's been like night and day, like being in a role that actually is more suited for my peak pathway, which is more about facilitating, like taking ownership of something and like caring for it, like using my jai and my need to like care and like make sure that things are taken care of with it, and dealing with people, making sure that they're okay, their needs are met, and making sure that everyone's coordinated. That kind of stuff really plays to my natural strengths, of like a Jaini strengths and peaking. And so knowing that, like, it gave me, like, it explained what I was feeling, because I was feeling like really, like, even though I was really good at those other roles I was doing, it was just really draining. At the end of the day, it was very exhausting, and it made me feel like, I was a failure at it, at the end of the day, even though I was doing well, because I was just not...
Shaken?
Yeah, I was shaken, yeah. And so,
even do well, it would leave you shaken.
Yeah, and so one, it helped me recognize that, see what was happening, and why it was happening, and then helped give me the confidence also to switch tracks, because I'm like, oh yeah, I see how I work, and I can extrapolate that I'll be good at that, and when I did, once you get over the learning curve, I am good at that role. So that's one of the things that Podler has been has gifted me, I guess, in terms of like a different perspective. So that's one of the things. Yeah, so I'll open it up to the group. Do you have any examples like that of how Podler's...
So I guess this first one was peak pathway?
Peak pathway.
Understanding peak pathway.
Mm-hmm.
How that understanding of the force has improved.
Mm-hmm.
I had a pretty major change this year, in that most of my life I thought I was an IG, and I think the people around me also thought this as well. But this year, Coach, just by, I guess, looking at some pictures that I had on my music page, or the one picture really, he decided to, I mean, when I originally sent in my video for Podler, it was just shot on a handheld camera on my phone. I've been awake for days. I don't know if I told you guys this, but I've been awake for days at that point, and I was just kind of a little bit loopy. I think because I found Podler, and I was like, okay, so this ties a lot of stuff together, and this is going to be important. And every so often,
on my end as well, I go through periods of greater or lesser weakness, and I think I was not in the strongest state, and at that point I could tell that Bruno wants to be an IG, and that'll weigh on you. Reading friends can be very...
It had a lot to do with, like, just like the lack of Nijai musicians, because those are the ones that I connect with, the directors and the producers, even more than the performers, more like the behind-the-scenes guys, and those were fewer. They were more like performers, like more flamboyant guys, and I just didn't identify with it so much, and so yeah, I just sent in like a 2-minute video of me on a bad. Anyways, it was bad media, and so for a while, Coach didn't even see my face at all. So I was like, okay, that's a done deal.
You were going thinking you were Naiji up until the correction.
Up until 2 or 3 months ago, really. What was it, like August or September? 4 months ago. 4 months ago, I thought I was an IG. But all my life I've had like these things that are just like basically all about me, like the way I've worked. Like I had this huge breakthrough along a few years ago where because I didn't have like the connections or the equipment or the training to create professional music, what I did was I took professional songs and I started stacking them on top of each other. But instead of just stacking one or two, like would be a normal thing to do, I started stacking like 5, 6, 7, and I was going crazy with it.
You mentioned this before, so I think you didn't know what it was, what you
No, but it drove me, like it literally drove me insane. Like I literally would stay awake for days. I just started like having like religious, quote unquote religious. They were just like insane visions, but they're not. I mean, that's how they felt at the time. Now I'm like, okay, so that was just BS. That was crap. But
when you're in it,
but the crux of it was like you have to do Ni. You have to do this whole stacking thing, and then channel it through your Jai, and then Z and Vi on down to Nai, Ji, Zai, Vi.
But tells you what it is. Yeah, it tells you what it is, and it tells you that it's valuable.
Yeah, it's value. It's very.
Like Natural Law spoken, like Natural Law, the biggest patron ever, or biggest, what a producer ever is saying that is, I want that there. Your needs
for a reason, and you have, it's actually like gold and fuel. It's something that you can use.
That's what was so different. That's what made it so intense. Is that like literally nothing else was giving me validation there. Like the system, people around me, everyone basically was like, no, this is nothing. This doesn't count. Because you're just taking other people's ideas. And I'm like, but that's what feels natural. Like, I don't get ideas like the Naiji do. I didn't know that word or what that meant, but I was like, that's not how I do it. Like, I don't do it that way. And if you're only going to value the Naiji way of doing it or the Vaiji way of doing it, even worse, then I have no chance. Like, I'm not worth anything. But that's not true. That's not the case. And I have, all these ideas and things to say. And it was only after the fact that I found out that like so much of ancient art, like going back, like when I found out about Shakespeare and the fact that like I didn't really study that in school, like I just sort of skimmed it, like to pass.
So Shakespeare, like I said, that's still speculative, but I know what you're saying.
That's completely speculative.
There's a lot of artists that are actually probably Nijai that a lot of people ascribe them to being a mojo that they're not. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean the thing about him is that.
I thought like Theo Van Gogh. I thought for sure he was being Naiji.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Van Gogh as well.
Right.
Exactly. But the thing about Shakespeare is that 34 out of 38 of his plays, that's like the vast majority of his plays. 34 out of 38 are basically just.
We should probably focus on like the experience of like the peak pathway discovery.
This is how it played. Yeah.
Mojo or not.
Okay, so if the way it played into my experience with Mojo is that basically it validates this concept that I don't have to do Nai myself, and this is something I've been struggling with for a long time. It's like there's this collective idea that you have to do Nai, you have to like be the original, do the original thing, and there's shades to that because obviously it's difficult. Like in music, for example, you can't write an original song. There's only 12 notes. So you're always going to be referencing something in the past, but there's shades to that, and that Naiji tend to do it much more extremely original, and Nijai are much more like about building bridges, collages, and doing these things. And so that was a huge breakthrough. Like you guys have noticed in the forums, like I basically was sticking to just music for the past year or two. I was just like doing music because like that's the only thing I felt comfortable with. But now I've just like exploded in all these directions. Like I can do all these other things like with me, because I'm not trying to like I'm not like holding that down and being like no that's I don't know, that's not original, that's not like new, that's like not worth anything, and in fact, it's just how I'm built, and so like I'm totally comfortable now, like saying I may never write a single thing from scratch ever in my life, but as long as I can take this and this and this and this and that and turn them all around and then add from here and there and then put it
So that is
over there.
that is a form of originality in the end, because, for example, like George Martin,
Yeah.
you can clearly tell the dude's a serious history buff. Lots of motifs and things he weaves in, he clearly got from the War of the Roses, and he's even said that much himself. But he's woven so much different things in
That's
there.
become a
New thing. It's awesome.
creation, which is beautiful.
But it has to be done the knee way.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. And so now I want to give opportunity for Glenn and Mitchell also to chime in on this. Don't know who wants to go first. Glenn, did you have any thoughts on this? And has your perspective on your peak pathway changed as a result of knowing pod layer?
I think definitely for sure, because before I used to be a little bit more into MBTI, so I thought I was like an INTP. And the way that I kind of rationalized that understanding was sort of like FE or G. It was like, it's always been a little bit of a sore spot for me throughout my entire life, I suppose you could say. And I've always thought of myself as subjective, and I've always thought of myself as being very logical, I guess, in a way. And so G was like this painful area, this painful world. But then when I found out that I was an IG, and then finding out that that is actually what I'm supposed to be good at, because I'm a Durham, and G is actually my tandem power, and is actually very closely related to me as far as like momentum goes, then that was like a big shock for me. I was like, oh, so now this means that I'm actually like deficient in a certain degree. Like I'm not developed enough in my G area, so I need to really focus on this. It really put things into perspective for me. And then I realized that sometimes the pain that IG feel towards like having to deal with people sometimes, dealing with the stupid, is sort of like is a very sort of it's natural for Naiji to feel that way from time to time, and so those feelings were put in the proper place as far as like how I understood them, not as though I'm some INTP character that has that's not supposed to be good at FE, but even that's wrong, because they're supposed to be good at FE to some, they're supposed to use it. But I was like, you know, it's not something that is important to me. I don't need to focus on it because it's my minor modulation. It's my major modulation power, right, basically. But then when I found out that I was actually supposed to be on my strong side, I'm supposed to be good at it, and I was like, oh. So then, you know, I had to really, you know, get into that. And then I had to sort of let go of the idea that I'm this logical kind of person, because I'm actually not as logical as a Zionee is supposed to, or not in the same way, because it's not as natural.
Things we all make is like you can be, you're still, I'm sure, the way you speak and everything, you can be highly logical, just not logic based.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so it was all stuff like that, and then just putting everything in the proper place, and then dealing with that, and then sort of moving forward. It was difficult. It was a shock, but then, you know, making the right kind of progress and moving in the right direction helped to sort of like make me more complete, or make me more just like better able to handle everything that goes on in my life, I guess.
Excellent. Mitchell, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I guess there's a similarity there as well for me with Glenn, because we've probably talked about this before maybe several times, that I mean, obviously, for most of my high school career, so to speak, I thought of myself as logic-based because I was into typology as well. Although, for me, there's the added wrinkle that I wasn't actually sure what logic-based mojo I was, because I could never quite get either like INTJ or INTP to fit. I kept kind of waffling as far as which one I was. But actually, I have 9 inside, so that makes sense. And those were the parts of myself probably that I related to more at the time. Because obviously I was very much a loner, which is common for an IG, but fairly extreme. And I was more into school and science and fantasy sorts of things, never really G, and I certainly didn't consider myself very strong in the social arena. I definitely wasn't. And that was it was odd that I might be an IG because and this is how people rationalize themselves as being other types in typology, because like what you're good at, it's like deterministic. What you're good at means that must be momentum for you. But actually, that's not how it works at all. It could actually be an answer that means you have to make more changes, or that would be beneficial for you to make more changes. But once you actually do, and you recognize what the truth is, it's actually a great thing, because you can actually start
it's a great
with your actual path.
You made a great point there, Mitchell. Well, all of you made the point that it's a bit shocking, some of the best things that you've experienced. And the best thing you experienced was shocking. But then what Mitchell's bringing up is that kind of like saying typology and lots of models, really, say anything where they have hang-ups about learning truth, is that in, like I said, the typology is the deterministic. And a lot of fields of supposed like actual knowledge and research actually do this kind of deterministic thinking. And one of the best things about it is it lets you keep your initial premise. And that's very comforting. People like to go get data that supports a premise, but that's not how it works. You get data to make premises.
But I was never satisfied with it. I could never totally make it fit. I was always just so hungry for more and more knowledge. Like I was never really satisfied with that being my type, and it really interested me. It was like an obsession, this typology sorts of stuff. I spent more time in it really than anything else probably, and I was into other things, and tennis too. Not things, but like this is, and.
But that drive there you're talking about, to actually know, that's what got you out of typology.
Exactly, I was just getting to that.
A strong mind that way, because that's kind of like the pill a lot of them will take, and it can be different fields besides typology, but basically the answers are comforting. Obviously lots of religions also fall to that. The answers mean I'm okay as I am. I don't have to change. You all basically said, I was shocked, I had to change, I feel awesome.
Yeah, the real answer, there's discomfort, but it was also discomfort for me with the answers I was getting because I knew that they weren't complete. I could see that.
And that's the thing, is you get to pick with typology. Is you don't like your answer, well, just you don't like your result, just change your answers and you get a new one. It's like it's like up to you, and that's not really how it works.
And that's one of the things that bothered me about MBTI. Just right off the bat, like you get to choose whatever you are. I was like, there's something inherently wrong with that. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be so that you just choose whatever.
There are some experts, though, where they'll tell you that you don't get to choose, like psych type. They don't think people get to choose. They will tell you what your type is, but they're just basics,
right. But
and
even
they
then,
have their own types, right? So
exactly,
they're under that spell a little bit themselves.
Even if they don't have a reliable way, really, of...
Yeah,
we're going to point out.
They think they get to choose, because they're special.
Just Mitchell, you said before I got to it, still someone's under that drug.
Yeah.
I get from the point of view of the patient. The patient likes to be under the drug of I get to choose. But if they're not, the doctor also is under the drug of I get to choose. So yeah, someone in there usually is getting slipped that Mickey.
Without really evidence. But anyway, I had some
not
time.
fighting off like a real secret agent should.
Yeah. So through this drive to that I wasn't comfortable with the answers I was getting. They just weren't enough. And I did come across Baudelaire on INTP forum just looking at threads and various things. And I didn't embrace it right away, but I saw what Ademus is writing about, like INFJs. He was still calling them that back then. And an IG and whatnot. I really related to it, and I was starting to contemplate that maybe I actually do have 9 Zion, maybe I could be an IG. And I had probably about a half a year, about 6 months before I actually got involved to start getting used to that idea. Like I kept thinking about it, and I was very skeptical of it at first, but just considering it, by the end of it, I was actually pretty sure I was an IG. Just reading all the stuff about it, it was like the descriptions were just so much better than the description I was getting for typology. Like, just fit more. I wasn't sure yet, and I was obviously still had some modulation issues and stuff. I wasn't sure my smile went above the midline. I was like, but I thought maybe it did. And so then I finally got read, and it turned out I was an IG ever since then.
for me, I just want to like jump in real quick. You can keep going too, Mitchell, though. But when I was on the INTP forum, I noticed a huge contrast between the way in which Ademus wrote his posts on the threads and stuff in comparison to a lot of the stuff that a lot of other people were doing on the INTP forum and even just on the internet in general. I was very, very, very heavily swayed by the confidence and the sort of like way in which Ademus wrote things, and he seemed like the only person that made sense to me. And everyone else seemed as though they were just coming up with excuses to sort of feed their desire for things to be a certain way. But you could tell that they were insecure to some degree. I didn't get that with Ademus, and that was one of the things that led me to want to pursue Podler further. I was like, no, if there is a right answer, it has to be here, more so than any other direction that I can go in, because this, because I don't know, it was just something like I could feel it, like my Zai, I think, or just all my powers in general, just like this is something that's going to lead someplace, and I was like, I took that step.
I completely agree with that. That's really well said, Glenn. Yeah, I mean, it was like reading what he was writing. A lot of it Coach wrote actually too. Ademus was just posting it, although he wrote some as well. It just had like this insightful authenticity to it that was just beyond what anything untrue could be. I just couldn't. I could not consider it. I couldn't get out of my head.
I couldn't understand why other people were not able to see it. I was like, why is this person?
But that did bother me, and that's why I didn't embrace it right away, and it took me some time because I'm like, well, this is a little weird, that like with people, and I'm like, I'm not really. And people, it does sway you, and maybe that's weakness, but it took me some time.
It's part of it.
I think it's good to be a little bit skeptical.
But
yeah, I think it's good to be a little bit skeptical. I think holding off like that was like not a bad thing to do. But then eventually it got to a point where you just couldn't hold yourself back anymore.
No, but I couldn't get out of my head. I never dismissed it. That wasn't like I was using.
Yeah. I think Coach was going to say something.
Oh no, I was enjoying this. It's really cool. I'm sure Ademus was glad to hear it too. I think it's a testament. It's something that makes me I get confidence. My higher spirits mention a lot whenever I worry about things. But there are certain things that are kind of unassailable. One is what Ademus was saying. He's explaining Podler theory. The Podler theory, just the innate way it's constructed, it makes sense.
It does.
And that's why Ademus liked it, because he came in, weighed everything, chopped everything. His eyes like, I am weighing and chopping the shit out of this, but it's tight. And so that's the state he went into when he was talking to these other people, and he's like, I think I'm stronger at weighing things, objectively and really being balanced on it, and I don't know why you're holding that, because I'm holding this, it feels like it's better.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on shaky
ground. One thing I think that Ademus liked right away, although I don't want to speak too much for him, but these things he's mentioned, I let him elaborate on his own, but just the fact that you guys said that the answers made more sense. He's mentioned that it relates back full circle to the shock. He's like, the answers are harder than I thought or wanted them to be.
Right.
That actually feels more right.
That
because
does.
when you learn geometry or botany or anything else about natural law, it's a lot harder. It's both more complicated and demands more of you to accept the way amoebas work. It's just natural law. Real natural law is just very demanding. But that demand is how all the pieces work together. Each piece of natural law is demanded to work a certain way or won't work.
You don't know natural law, so when you actually learn it, you have to change in order to understand it better.
Yeah.
It's just always the way it works.
You have to make room for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think it was, even though I'm not an IG, like, because of the connection to the other, I've always had like a strong idea of like how an IG thinks and what they do. And most of my favorite, I've basically been between Nigez artists in my work. So what it did was when I found Podler, and I found it through one of Ademus's posts actually too. I was like looking up. I had gotten into typology and I was looking up like celebrities or whatever, and I found one of his posts, and it stood out because it was the only thing I ever saw that was trying to dissect people based on their physical attributes. And I think it may have been a post that it was one of the earlier posts, but in any case, it wasn't on INTP forums. But I later found that forum. It was in some other forum that he wound up on. Anyways, my point is, I looked at your list of Naiji, and I compared that with like with the typology estimates of like 1 to 6%, or 1 to 2%. I was like, there's no way Naiji are 1 to 2%, because I feel this energy coming from almost everywhere in media.
That's interesting, yeah.
And then when I saw your list, I was, yes, this makes sense. Hitler, Jimi Hendrix, Martin Luther King, all these people, they've all given me the same like impression. What's that?
All of them are revolutionaries, but in different ways. Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. And
I'm curious, something else you don't mind me asking, Bruno. I'm curious about because you mentioned about looking up the names and everything. I know something that's been very influential on you, and you're now kind of like expressing it on the forums, is being able to see riffs.
oh my god. Oh my god! I can't. That is basically how, like, when I look at people, or like when I listen to a song, like I don't hear the V of it, I don't see the V of it, and it's just like, and it basically captured that whole experience. It's like, yes, this is that experience, but like a billionfold just exploded. Yeah, so that was a lot of it too, as in. And that ties in with what I'm saying. Like, I've always like.
I'm hoping on that that'll be something that others will experience too, like the riff list you're compiling, that they'll have that. Whoa, those 2-3 people, they do look alike. Like they're gonna have that. Like, I think, holy crap, there's something here.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people like on different forums and stuff that I read that make like, oh, isn't this person like Emma Watson really reminds me of Natalie Portman. Oh my God! They
do
could be
reading.
like, they have to be related or something. Like their energy, it's like the same. You know, I feel the same energy, and people are like, yeah, we see that. You know, but
I know what I get a lot. It's big, like a rush, and this helps me a lot because I have to kind of keep like pioneering like the Rosetta Stone, and sometimes I'm like, man, is this actually doable? Is this real? But I always come back to it is. And one thing that I take a nice little treat is when people call out riffs. And when they call that riff, you for sure were like, I was thinking that. And it's eerie. There's like this eerie feeling. I'm curious if you guys experience that all as well. Of like, I don't know, I always get an eerie feeling where like I'll have like 2 or 3 riffs pop in my head, and then like 2 or 3 different people in the session will call out one each. I'm like, those are the 3 people I was thinking too. It's like
right, because it's not just like a particular mojo. It's like a person within that mojo. It's
very specific.
It's very specific. Not only like are you agreeing on what the mojo is, but that actual like riff, that energy, that pattern of that, you know, person with that mojo.
That entire like fabric of natural law, that you guys are seeing that the same thing. Basically.
Yeah, you saw it together. Exactly, you saw it patched together. It's like, that's so cool. I feel all shiny as like a part of their team those moments. I do. It's I'm like, it's like the phenomenon is real, and we're so cool. Man, we're cool. Do you mean that's a headspace no other humans have really been doing? Where they actually look at it, first of all, they'd actually be able to all know, oh, that's an Ijai dude, but they'd actually go, that's an Ijai dude, and like a couple were like so-and-so. They all go, yeah, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, of course. Anyone Rosetta Stone would actually say, yes, that looks like those people.
And that's one of the biggest differences between Podler and all the other competing theories, is because they'll never be able to have that. That sort of like mind meld kind of quality, because that can only happen from being able to look at the objective world of like natural law and be like, we're all seeing the same thing. Like, this is a pen that I'm holding or whatever. Like, yeah, you can't deny this. And so, you know, all the patterns that come from that is just undeniable.
Absolutely. So we've covered the angle pretty good of the peak pathway. So I had some other ones.
Sure.
I don't know if which ones will bite. Let me know. So one of them, and I'll tell you, like for me, like just like in general, how it's changed is like as far as like my understanding or my perspective on like what's going on in the world, like in just as far as like what's going on in like who's in power, like what mojos are in power, what mojos are at the heads of like corporations, institutions, and how those like all linked. Yeah, the influential currents, that those like patterns are all like they link across all those different industries, and really it's like
history
provided me like it's like really mind-blowing because yeah, you see it across history and you see it across industries, and like you realize that like things aren't really that. I used to think things were so much more separate and different, but like you see, for example, like the Vaiji and the Zenai in power, and like as far as like heads of state, heads of corporations, heads of like and
heads
even
of organized crime.
Of organized crime. So basically, like of like these, whether it be like institutions or
accumulated blocks of power.
Yeah, blocks of power, whether it be a political authority or financial authority, producing authority. Like those all like have the same rifts that are in power there, and like and then.
Just out of curiosity, sorry, have there been Vi Alpha in organized crime too, or is that mostly Xenon?
There's one I'm thinking might be. I still doing was Joe Bonanno.
Interesting.
I think, Joe Bonanno.
That's really new. It just I knew Xenai were in there. You mentioned that.
Yeah, so far it's been mainly Xenai, but I believe we were watching. I've mentioned that she and I have been watching some like true crime stuff where they show video, and I mentioned in that some of them look like Vaiji, but none of them of the name famous ones came up. Capone and Gotti, they're Xenai. But Joe Bonanno, he looks like one of them like crusty old but charismatic Vaiji. Captains of industry.
Yeah, because that doesn't seem so like far-fetched if you
it doesn't.
happen to be like a part of an old influential family. Joe just happens to do dealings like
actually, it's from an old influential family.
who have dealings with that are illegal outside of the law, but they're still.
I've never Vaiji criminals. Just look at Shkreli.
Yeah, exactly. So,
are there still a lot of Naiji criminals too?
Yes, but like I said, it seems like I've mentioned this before actually about the G to Z. Is that G tends to work better in smaller numbers, except Vaiji have a pass on that because they can actually get long-term legacy, and long-term legacy makes a mandate they can accrue larger than that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, Z is better at doing things on a universal protocol level for like 200 or more people.
Yeah.
200 and less, it starts getting more where G takes over. Durams, and as the groups get smaller and more extreme, more doing their own thing, it's going to be more Naiji.
Yeah, like religious cults and things like that get really
extreme sports, for
that's
example,
more Naiji criminals.
Right.
Or just
biker gangs and stuff like that?
Yeah.
I get biker gangs in my mind for some reason a little bit.
Well, bike gangs actually have two levels to it, which is those who have sort of come in because they're basically just hanging out, being rough, doing their own thing, and then there are those who are coming into organized power. I think actually, for example, like Sonny Barger, who's like one of the originators of the Hells Angels. I think he's Naiji still, but I saw recently like the current presidents of other motorcycle clubs and the current Hells Angel one. Most of them look Xenai. So I think that probably smaller groups and newer groups. Smaller, newer groups are going to tend to have a lot of Naiji. The revolutionary art, I do my own thing, that's going to work very well there. And that's what I was familiar with growing in Baltimore. Baltimore doesn't have the kind of organized crime that some other people do. It's more like smaller gangs of families, gangs of friends, things of that nature. And these small kind of like very tight, loyal crews, the Naiji and also the Zenai way, and you see them showing up in, for example, in gangster rap. The Naiji and the Zenai, they roll well in that environment, but it doesn't scale up. It's based heavily on personal loyalty and the ability to read the other person's face. That's That's a big part about it. And you have to kind of care more about legend than money. At a certain level of scaling up organized crime, they all tell you this. You watch true crime stuff like we do. It started with like a vision, and then it turned into be a money-making operation. Pretty much, I think when it starts shifting to the money-making operation, you're going to get
mojo shift too.
Shift too. Because like smaller crews of like say criminals tend to be doing it more to be first of all independent. They don't want to organize crime other than their crew because that would mean almost like having a job, and that's why they're doing this to not have a job. Or not a real job. And then the other thing is like to be controversial. You know what I mean? Like, being controversial actually costs you money always. So I mean, if that's why you like to do it, there's like a conflict of interest there.
It begs the question, like, how do Naiji make jobs work for them, though? It's kind of like an interesting thing.
Oh, the short version is they use their peak pathway talents, which is they can go up on their own and go places other people can't go.
They see things, angles that others don't seek. So
that's valuable. That's
valuable.
That's worth stuff. If you can actually figure ways to get to stuff, figure out people's psychology first, come up with new art, come up with new marketing campaigns, it has power. But you'll have to prove to the tribe that your spells have power. But if you can prove your spells have power, then basically spells. You get paid to do spells.
Yeah, I mean, I think both Najez and maybe Nazez have sort of a line jumping ability where instead of like going to training and getting the normal route, they can actually teach themselves and then sort of jump the line by proving themselves in some way. So they don't necessarily have to get the traditional accreditation.
Pathway discoveries is that realizing what gifts you give, how you explain them, and how you present them to get authentic reactions and validation. Because one thing is, for example, say Najez, but really all the interpretives are going to have this, is that they're going to work better on portfolio and interview. Resume and kind of like just doing generic work, and even high-level generic work, it's not where you shine. It'll actually...
it's boring.
It's boring, and there's more chance of you messing up, and it's not energizing. So it's be more energizing if you can make a relationship with someone at work and they like you and they're like, ooh, you're cool. Or it can be like, say, like the Cerebral's way, where just they see your thinking. They can actually see you do something like spell-like. They're like, ooh, I want to hire you. That's a cool ability. They kind of have to see you doing it. If you do that, then like Bruno's saying, you kind of can jump the line. You can jump the line if you can show spells. But you kind of know at peak pathways, you realize, oh, my peak pathway's up here on the SS index. I'm going to have to do it so that the other part of the SX index can see me. That's a big part of being interpretive, like Sergeant Pathways, that no one like, oh, I'll have to like do stuff. It's cool and it is real.
Yeah.
But I'll have to do certain things to sort of prove it or show it.
Demonstrate it. Yeah, the value of it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. So getting back. Don't know if you guys have any additional thoughts on the geopolitical scene.
Oh,
yeah.
I had some. Sure,
yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you. Bring us back.
Oh, yeah. Bruno and then Glenn.
Oh, I was actually going to ask Glenn if he's bringing that up because he's got some ideas for 2016 that you're thinking of, a career that you're thinking of moving into, or what brought up that question?
Any kind of careers that I'm moving into? Well, I mean, I don't know. It's just sort of like, I don't know. I'm still thinking about that.
By the way, because he's been getting into the election scene these days.
That's right.
I know he is.
Yeah, he is. He's
He's
big
in
with
Texas
Bernie
as well.
Sanders, who's quite a cool Vici.
Well, for me, I mean, I've noticed that I have a pretty strong interest when it comes to like fitness and that sort of stuff, like nutrition and that kind of area. That seems to be my like easy in kind of thing. Like I seem to be strong in that. I'm thinking about maybe see if I can do anything in that. But my question that I had, or not question, but as far as like what I've noticed in bubbles and stuff is noticing actors and actresses and the sort of like different mojos that they cast for different roles and stuff, like Naiji, Nijai, and then there's also the Naizi and the Nizai. They do sometimes get the inspirationals correct, but then sometimes you also see like the Jinai being paired with the Nizai, which is interesting because it's sort of like for some reason in the world right now, and based on the trending, that seems to be a dynamic or that people like to see.
And there are others. You also get their others. The Naizi and the Jaini are also very, very often paired together. So the
Exactly. It's
I
interesting.
think one is they
There are others.
have like a warmth, charisma in the world, so they actually have both leads have the G. So it's got this kind of like warm banter. And then like in the
Exactly.
procedural shows, you see Naizi, Jaini, and Nijai are often, the whole cast will be those three mojos. Like, there's no G and Zai here. There is Zai and G. There's the law and ethics.
Yeah, that concentrated
Z and Shy. Yeah.
Signal. Because that's like, because that's kind of the highlight of the
that
show.
accentuates the story. Does it make it more high stakes maybe, or more poppy, more hyper real? I guess I don't know.
Well, I think it highlights it because I guess the story is kind of like a little temple. If you're doing a procedural show, you know, it's kind of like a legal temple or a forensic temple, and so to kind of like give that vibe, it often doesn't actually relate to how offices may be or how people are dating, but to make like the energy of that world. If your energy is to be very legal but with a moral kind of balancing, it's cool to have all mojos that have that because you know what I mean. That will. There's a balance there. There's a balance between like how real is that to actually have that, but some ways it is real.
Because would you say like if we were just using an example of procedural, like in real life, are those people that are in those roles in those jobs, are they like Naizi, Jaini, Nishai?
Okay, now she's asking a complex question here. It's a very good question.
Because I think I would see more like Zinai, for example, than
Right,
they
but
show in the shows.
Yeah.
The point still stands. This is something I've actually mentioned about a lot of shows that they have to work on, which is to make it more complete. So in procedural shows, yes, in most procedural stuff I see on TV, like real stuff, it's usually Z9 and by Z. Most of these like long-term police officers and stuff like that in these cases and so forth, they're mainly Z9 and by Z kind of military. So long story short is I think if you were to go to like where they were solving the crime, it'd probably be mainly those two mojos. I think even the guys and the girls are mainly going to be Z9 and by Z. Other stuff in there, of course, but that would be predominant. But also, probably most of those Z9, if they're dating or seriously or go home to who they're married to, it's probably a Zaini or something like it. And they don't often bring that in. Usually they have no dating relationship, or they don't bring that aspect of the universe in, or they have them always dating each other, you know, as if that's the way to go. But one, it's not the way to go, and actually, even most of the time, it doesn't happen. Most mojos, even if they go to an area like a career bubble where it's mainly just their own mojo, they often still will end up with an inspirational. Because once you go to, you know, and see one of those and interact with it, like, wait, this is different, I like it, and it's just inspirational. So.
Yeah, so I think people who write the stories, they kind of like make that sort of stuff up. They make it up a little bit. They're like, oh, well, we'll just make these two people get into some kind of relationship for the story, I guess, to make it more interesting.
Yeah, but that does translate sometimes into like the pairings that you do see off screen, you know, as a result maybe because the fact that they work together, they're sort of like have this, put in this script and these stories that have affinity.
There's definitely something to that, for sure.
Which is very interesting because you do see in real life like Jinai with Nizai and Naizi with Shaini.
But I think, I definitely see what you're saying. I agree with that point.
Yeah.
But in context, I'll also say that proportionately, it's not as much.
Yeah.
Like if you were to say how often do Naizi and Jaini, Naizi dude and Jaini female get paired as romantic partners in procedurals? A lot. Like that's a very, very common phenomenon. How often do they end up being mates? Not that often, but more often than average. So
I wonder how much of the, like, when them being paired together is also a little bit of the men are logic-based, women are values-based kind of thing creeping in there.
But there's definitely, I know there's definitely like a kids are values-based, adults are logic-based.
Logic-based.
They do it all the time.
Yeah, that too. Kids are very often like Genèse or Nugez, almost always.
Yeah.
I mean, not always, but
The Naizi dad with the rebellious Genai son.
Yeah, it's like
that's so cliche.
it's like they have to make more yin things. Like it has to be all yin in some way.
One of the ways in which that really bugs me is this show called The Flash, the dad is an IZ and Barry Allen is cast as an IG. It's kind of weird. It's kind of like makes you like, I can't really get into the story as much as I really want to.
It does throw it off.
Yeah.
You were going on about something, Coach. You were gonna like explain.
No, that was basically it.
Yeah, but in real life, I mean, maybe that happens, but that's not the norm at all. People don't make the. I mean, even if because they don't know what anyone's actual mojo is, and they're not really thinking in those kind of quality terms, always or usually, then they do just end up with their inspirational and don't really. I mean, maybe they think that their inspirational is more value based, and then I don't know if they're a guide, but they're not actually.
I mean, just anecdotally, like I can think of 2 Naizi females that I know that I'm almost 99% sure they come from Naizi and Naizi female, Jaini male families.
Interesting.
So I don't know. It just seems it.
That may be possible. We've mainly seen in the Rosetta Stone it being the male is the Naizi and the female is the Jaini.
Right. No, that's definitely true. That's definitely true in general. Even just even just if we just break it down into separate, just the Naizi and just the Jaini, most of the Naizi are male and most of the Jaini are female. But I don't know. It just seems like there's all these other things that are like out there, and media may very well have a lot to do with it. Just like the way that these this media, because like media basically it subconsciously teaches you certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
what's valuable? What's worthy? Like what? What's a winning strategy or winning story? What's not? Yeah, that does.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people. I mean, everyone that doesn't understand Mojo basically is working with really outdated software, and so yeah, I mean, I was thinking like, how would Podlayer fit into like a casting? Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could like start Podlayer, one of the branches of Podlayer, as like a casting sort of thing, and just like casting people.
Yeah, you get hired by Hollywood. It will
happen in the future because as people have seen it, they always want more real. When people went from photograph, dark black and white to color, everyone wanted color. And when photographs went to video, everyone wanted video. When video got talkies, we could hear voices with it. Everyone wanted that. So pretty much it's been consistently that way. People want more real.
People see Mojo, they're going to
like,
see it.
This movie's too like certain things that just happen in real life. When it first was put on movies, people were like, oh, this is shocking. But people accepted like this is actually reality. It's the same lesson again. Once they got over the shock of, well, you don't necessarily want to watch a prison movie, but if you are going to watch a realistic prison movie, there will probably be a rape scene in there. You know what I mean? Like, if it's an American prison, that's just the truth. So it's a question of, do you want to see truth or not? Now, you don't have to always look at stuff you don't want to, but if you want to look at certain things, you do have to accept the truth of it. I think it's something a lot of people have a hard time with. It's a life practice of which most people who like say they know truth almost never do, is to really like just keep questioning what something is and accepting the answer. Just let the answer be the answer. Letting the answer be the answer, you know what I mean? Like genius is scrutinizing the obvious. It's true. Just letting the answer be the answer is very hard. But in Mojering, you get to do it all the time. You get to and you get to figure, you know what? I thought I was totally unbiased, but afterwards, when I see I was wrong, and I try to figure out why I was wrong, I was totally biased. You have to own that. You have to kind of and that's challenging. I'm really proud of us.
It's not easy. Like that's why I'm saying. That's what I'm thinking. It would be almost impossible without some sort of traction to see established casting agents who work so much on reputation and their network buying into something like Podlayer right away.
Sure.
But on the flip side, I can actually see YouTubers, and where you guys live in Los Angeles is the hub, the national hub for YouTubers, like all the top YouTubers, like Jenna Marbles, Smosh, all those people. They're all right in your backyard, basically.
Cameron Crowe.
Yeah.
Jack's Films has this episode where he invites a bunch of them.
And it's super competitive, in the sense that it's a free for all. like literally everyone has the same tools. Like if you just have a camera, you're on equal grounds as everyone else, and so it's super competitive in that way. And so having any edge, like having the edge of knowing what your other is, what your audience is, that can really help you spread out to a much larger audience. Like because I see a lot of these hosts, whatever mojo they are, like you can see in the comments, you can almost see the other just the way that they reply. Like if it's a directive, the comments will be very adaptive, or if it's an adaptive, the comments will be like extremely directive, and so on. And
I know that as well.
What's that?
Yeah.
I've noticed that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's natural law playing out in a way that's even smoother than with movies and other things that have to go through Y and Z, where it's like much more. It's much more like
You're right. It's a direct conduit. It's just the person puts themselves out, and then whoever wants to respond to that, who sees it, can. There's no deciding council of will you get the money or the green light to do it. You can just do it, and you're right. Natural law can just flow cleaner. We've mentioned that before times that the reality shows, people talk bad about them, and there are things that they didn't work on, obviously. But one big thing is much more interesting demographic spreads.
Yeah.
The more reality TVs come in and vloggers and so forth, you see a lot more of a spread of humanity than you do on things that are more produced. The more produced they are, much more kind of like narrow mojos and predictable. You kind of predict what it's going to be.
Yeah, and people really like.
By the way, predictability is great in science. Predictability in storytelling is not.
And people really like caught on to the reality shows once they started. Like it was a
shock at first.
Shock at first, but it's really a feed that like.
It's got that truth in it. It's got that real.
Yeah. That nothing else can match. Yeah.
I know for studying mojo, I know Jilene, I think, I know Glenn also, and what else is, but like, Naked and Afraid, it's a good show in general, but one of the things about it is to actually be able to see mojo reacting. Like, you're like, I'm going to see a Nijai after 4 days, no sleep, no food. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, by the way, I would never do this to a subject. That'd be a horrific mad scientist. But these people are volunteering. They're volunteering for this.
Free will.
So since they're volunteering, it is fascinating. You're like, okay, so that's what they look like when they get fish or when they fail to get fish. I don't know. I'd love just drinking that in. And it's particularly, obviously, I mean, it'd be good for any human, but mojo, like learning about how mojos do things, it's so cool. We see a lot actually in the show, like Naked and Afraid, where we can clearly see like the Jai or the Ji or this or that shift, and the other partner didn't. They either didn't see the shift or they didn't recognize what it was and how to deal with it properly, and the teamwork goes to crud. That happens all the time. And those that naturally seem like they're able to read, like they read their partner better. Reading your partner better makes a better team. And that's, we haven't taught the phenomenon, but we've seen Naked and Afraid for like 3 seasons now. We've seen lots of couples, and that's a trend. Those that can read the other one and accept the peak pathway they see. They usually, the ones that don't do well usually either can't see it, just do their own thing, oblivious. They're like, oh, girls like this, and they just refuse accepting data to the contrary. Or they're like, oh, you're a person like that, but I don't think people should be doing that. They're just doing the peak pathway.
Right.
You know, but they think the person that immediately jams the humans up. And it's so cool. They're trying to get water and food, like the bare necessities, and you can see the peak pathway. The peak pathways gel, accept, and grow. They thrive usually, even when it's tough. If the peak pathways are not seen or like tended to, it goes south quick. Like before the food or water runs out, like day 2. Day 2, it's going bad.
Dramatically change things, regardless of the amount of resources that are around there. Just the morale.
Morale's huge.
But yeah, being able to read other people's cues and honor them, be accepting of them, and working with those.
But you guys have been mojoing for a while now. The two go hand in hand. You need to accept the phenomena to read the phenomenon. You can't actually. People try to mojo read who have like really bad thoughts that are stupid from past models, and they want to learn to read mojo but not drop stupid ideas.
Can't.
Mojo is real. There's no stupid there. if you have stupid on you and you try to read real, it's just going to be hitting you in the face where it hurts and you want to go away, or it'll just hit and go over your head and you'll be like, I don't see it. And you really do have to kind of like be able to take the real in. That's a gift. I even when I'm feeling beat up like today from doing purification, I'm like, thank you for actually natural law showing me what's going on, giving me the tools to observe what's going on. That's the greatest gift. And then from there, humans, you know, do for self, as they say in the street, do for self.
Yeah, it's accepting the truth and being like humble about it, like not being like I'm gonna just like ignore this and walk away, but being like, okay, this is the truth, this is what it is, and yeah, this is, you know, move forward.
Right, working with it.
Yeah, I'm an advanced mode reader myself, but I am constantly confronted with the arrogance of the story I want to go on there. I don't even realize it until after I correct or read. I'm like, oh, apparently I wanted that story to be a certain way, and so I try to just paint it like that. You know, I really like being corrected. It feels, you know, rough, but I'm like afterwards, I'm like, that goodness.
It feels great.
You feel really clean. Like I
the right
feel
answer
like I'm
just
at
always
ease now.
holds. It's like we were talking about earlier, where like the typology, it just was never enough for me. Like I could listen to that all day. It wasn't even so much that I wanted to hear that, but it's just even if I did, it's just that it's like it just doesn't. It's just not as compelling as the truth.
The truth has a feel
Doesn't
to it.
hold.
It has a
It's just-
feel.
I can't get the truth out of my head. It's like it's true.
Yeah.
It's just gonna keep coming up and everything. It's gonna be consistent with, and the other things aren't, or they're not gonna have as much to them.
You're gonna try to like ignore it, but then as you start walking your one way as like a Naishi or just, you know, any mojo like doing their thing, eventually you're gonna bump into it again, right? You're just gonna keep getting
The one
into
way
it.
is really just kind of like a conscious devotion to tracking that. But all mojos basically have to peak. And if
Yeah.
their conception of their peaking is not actually their peaking, you
You're
know,
gonna keep bumping into walls and not
Hemorrhaging
understanding
resources.
why. Yeah.
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 Yep. Being in alignment with natural law is where it's at, regardless of the mojo.
That actually came up, I believe it was a Jaini I was reading recently, a female, and she was doing, she's done several different kinds of horror movies and is well liked in that genre. But she says herself, she actually, not personally, was not big into horror, although she's glad she's good at it. But the one that she actually was, I think, her favorite, and also the one that scared her the most, was one she did that was actually a natural disaster film. And the reason is, it was actually truth. She's like, I can, you know, pretend that, you know, the person with the machete or this and that, it's like,
If it's more fantastical, then you can kind of
laugh it off
laugh
easier.
it off.
Yeah, or like monsters and stuff, you know, you know that that's not really true.
True. And then the other one is, she said, even if they were real, it's a real person with a gun. She's like, but you could maybe make them feel sorry for you, and then they wouldn't do what they were going to do, or you say, oh, look over there, you distract them. But she was saying, and this is how truth is, your truth. When like a tsunami comes in, everything must bow. And she said, actually, the impersonal power of it. She said that was most friendly. You simply had to run. You had to be alert. You had to make sure your loved ones were, you know where they were, because it's happening. It is what it is, and it's happening.
You can't shake it. You can't control it or manipulate it. Is that like?
Well, there's an accepting to it. I mean, which I think the thrill surfers see in the waves. You can use it to your advantage, and then, you know, you're a god. That's the thing. As long as you actually accept that wave is going to do what that wave does.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go with it, then you surf it. You're one with it. It's power, and you are one. Like you know what I mean? But otherwise, the power's against you.
Yeah,
Whatever.
there's a fear that I think humans have when it comes to like being really, really, really yin to the yang of something else. And natural law is the most yang there is. It's also the most yin there is. But you know, it's sort of like you have to accept it. And sometimes people, they're just like, well, maybe I can do this. Well, no, this is how it is. You know, like accepting that is sometimes really difficult. And but if you're able to like swallow your pride and, you know, check your ego at the door, then you're able to use that to your advantage and be like, okay, well, a smart person would do this because this is just going to be the way it is. And, yeah.
Yeah, true. But sometimes you have to have kind of like made to where you don't have a choice. Although a lot of that, and props to all of us in this regard, that can be a personal choice. Like, I don't have a choice to accept truth because I want to be this kind of hero. My dedication to I want to be a seeker does not allow for that. So, I mean, technically, I guess I could ignore the truth. Like you were saying, Mitchell, like, the kind of person I want to be doesn't. That's huge. That's huge. To being a Mojo reader, to being pod layer, to being a seeker, you have to, like, I choose to be a person that goes for highest truth and greater good. And then I will figure out what that means to me, but I won't make how it means to me. It's so hard to do this. Even scientists, so hard to do. What it means to me affect the answer. Whenever I get to where I'm like really purifying, it always comes down to that. The answer is the answer, and then the meaning for you comes second. It's very hard though. Modry teaches this, but it's for everyone, any kind of philosophy or whatever, to not put like its meaning to you first. Most scientists had a very hard time, even their own research, to not, when they choose their experiment and how they go about it. Luckily, the scientific method makes it to where they can't be stupid, because there's a natural desire to want to validate what you want. Simple as that.
Yeah, a lot of scientists sometimes, or like people who think that they're scientists, they'll in order to sort of like like win a debate, they'll cherry pick like certain studies and stuff like that that back up their ideas of what it is that they want to be like true. But then you'll figure out later that those are actually not really studies that have anything to do with blah blah blah, and so they're kind of like not relevant. And so people do this all the time, and scientists, the bad ones or the ones that have those momentary moments of weakness, they're guilty of making those kinds of mistakes. It takes a real seeker to be like, well, this is what it is.
Sure. It's a muscle too. Just like things like being brave. If you actually exercise your bravery on a daily basis, you'll get braver. It's true. And so the same thing, which is what I think Modry is such a great gift, and get back, I guess, full circle to what you're saying about all the other areas. To really understand relationships better, you have to like read the relationship. But that requires accepting the truth of things. And the Modry is like a constant like accepting the truth of things. It builds that accepting the truth of things muscle. There's a muscle that does that for a person.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Kind of like you're
getting confronted with the truth and what
processing
these individual samples and
like a truth liver. Your truth liver gets stronger. Oh, we've gone on a bit.
Yeah,
here.
we've gone on
This was really great,
but this was a great conversation, and hopefully those of you watching, got a lot out of it. I think we've demonstrated how much change Podler can bring about. Good
in a lot of
change,
different areas too.
in a lot of different areas. Before we sign off, then, does anyone have anything else that they wanted to add?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we can think, if you guys want to think about maybe a goal for like 2016 would be like reaching out to artists, content creators, people in general that would first latch on to the general theory of pod layer, I guess.
Well, starting 2016, a big thing I'm going to be doing is doing the Truthfire Journal. I've been talking about it for a while. She knows it's pushing everything I'm doing right now to earn the right to do that. As a part of that, I'll be basically kind of like doing like a pundit thing where I'm talking about all kinds of Mojo journalism stories. And
a vlogger, show.
And shout outs to other vloggers and content creators. I do think it's something I would want to incorporate on a regular basis. So yeah, that is something that does seem intriguing. It would fit in with the push I'm going to be starting.
Yeah, I think that would be the perfect platform
for it.
Do it, and then that'll be once have the 20K purified. That'll be like the foundation, or to start, sharing these stories.
That'll be due diligence. That'll be all my past media. So I think it's time for me. I have two things. One, Truthfire Dragon's more like artistic, and sometimes me just sounding off like a crazy person. And then Truthfire Journals be more professional. I'll still be me, but in a professional pundit capacity. I think that would be the right platform to talk to other content creators. They'll probably all still think I'm still crazy, but I plan on making a lot of invitations. We'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, there's lots of approaches that can be taken. Like I think definitely some of the adaptives, like the Nemojos, like the riffing collages. They may really see that and just like, well, I don't understand all this theory and the words, but I do see the connection.
No, I think it's going to be a huge thing for us. I'm really glad you're actually building that up. I think that's going to be a great.
I'm working that as a muscle too because that works with my music as well. So I'm thinking of that the new muscle and just making it a point to like be regimented about that. Get on there.
Like this, but riffing's one of the best ones. Is that the more you do it, you get better. It's like a fluency. Because each sample is like a word.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be super selective. Like anything that's not eye matching, mouth area matching, and energy matching, I'm not even including. So I'm being super strict. Yeah, I'm trying to be super strict about it because I want this to like be a tool that we can use to reach out to people that will then reach out to other people.
We need to have a multifaceted front. So we'll be doing like the Truthfire Journal, kind of like more of a slightly more professional vlogging kind of platform. The riffing collages, new updates to the books. Also, we'll be doing art and things like that. But then also at the end of the day, something we talked about as well, is we need to accept that we don't know how many people will come in, so we have to do the best we can with what we have and hand it off to future generations. That's the right thing to do. But obviously, we're trying to make the team as big as it can be. But there's a combination of making the team bigger and making the power, the impact and output of the team better for its weight class. Does it make sense? So getting heavy weight class, but then also maximizing what you can do at that weight class.
Yeah, I mean, one concern I have with like the whole YouTube community is that it's very like low attention span, like short attention span. Like they'll latch onto things very quickly and very intensely, but just as quickly let it go and just forget about it. So everything it's just like it's all about like constantly.
There's different platforms because we have the data which appeals to a certain kind of person to just go there right away, just go right to data. There's people who are liking the Ambassador Incantation. They like, I can just read it. That works for them. Some of them have enjoyed me ranting. Hearing me rant inspired them. Lots of people, for example, liked Ademus's forum posts. Lots of people have actually liked Mitchell and so forth, eloquent handling people on the YouTube comments. The riff packages you're talking about could be another great tool. I want for what the team can do, I want as many tools as will work, but I do want to make sure that we're focusing on getting the data, presenting it correctly, conducting ourselves the right way as a blueprint for how to stack. And then from that, stack as big as we can, obviously.
Yeah, we might. So then we may think about taking like the first week or two of January of like thinking, okay, so there's some threads on the forum, they're outdated information, and there's nothing too valuable in there. We could probably just cut off the entire thread because there may be one or two errors in there. They're just like, oh, Tom Cruise is of IG. It's like, what's the point of like correcting the whole thing? Just cut it off.
That's a really cool thing. Actually, Next Thing Serenity have actually been talking about as well. Is that as part of doing the Truthfire Journal, one thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting a little update on our webcam. We're going to be getting some little recording equipment, things of that nature. And I'm also going to get the 20K. There's things I want to kind of line up for that. One of them we're talking about is what?
Cleaning up the forums.
Yeah, actually tidying up our forums, our website. So we have been focusing on like the homepage and the links you can get to right away. But the forum is like its own huge blowout. That could also get a little bit of a makeover. So that's a really great idea, and that would feel good, kind of like the beginning of the year, a little freshening up, and things that are actually questionable or outdated, just kind of like tidy them up, either edit them or just delete them.
I like it. So user friendly, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe Bruno, maybe the first thing would be whenever you have the time is maybe just kind of like try to find questionable threads. Maybe make a little list somewhere in a document of like threads you think are questionable that maybe we should do something about. Does that work? Yeah.
Wait.
Cool. But that's a very good idea.
Good suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great job, Eileen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was awesome.
It's cool. I think we get to hear you talk this much normally. This is great. I get to hear her talk a lot more, so I think that you guys get to enjoy some. She's really cool. Like when she like setting the scene, he does with Jai first, which we don't do. I was like, ooh, that's neat. Jai Alpha setting the scene.
And good discussion too.
Yeah, very good discussion. Yeah, so thank you guys, and hope everyone out there in cyberspace enjoyed. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Okay, bye everybody.
Coach, I just had one really quick question.
Oh, yeah.
I'll go off.